Welcome everyone to Intermediate Selfology with yours truly, Tristan McGough, philosopher at large. And today, the large topic that we're going to be discussing has to do with the Virtueverse. And in terms of the 7 pristine ideas or intuitive arrangements of what it means to be a self, that squarely lands within the realm of seeing the self as the psychonaut, the pilgrim, the one who is all expanding, which is reality really that is moving into itself. That's what self-actualization and self-transformation are. They are moving into oneself in a very expanded, almost non-egoic sense. So today we're going to consider the 14 domains of the Virtueverse. And so we're going to cover the whole existential spectrum of human virtue. Now, you might recall that in a previous episode, I had taken out this cognostic card of the Virtueverse, in which is really how Newtopia, that is, the ever-expanding perfectibility of humankind, working in a socioverse, that is working in an integrated cultural environment that is aligned with nature and which is progressively moving toward the full potentialization, potential to actual, of the human species as it's integrated with the other species, particularly of this planet. When we're talking about the Virtueverse, remember I was talking about the generation of virtue, and I'm not here speaking about an ethics course. You can go and study that in academic institutions if you so desire. Here I'm looking at virtues as those strengths of conscience, those proclivities which are sanity prone. They help you maintain psychonautical balance in an ever-changing, very mutable, widely variable empirical world that we all inhabit. So when it comes to virtues themselves, there are certain virtues that are natural. That is, they're good in themselves to do, such things as clarity of mind, serenity of heart, efficacy of activity. You can execute what needs to be done most efficiently and effectively. These kind of things are naturally virtuous by their nature. In other words, they help build and strengthen the character. That is, that element of us which helps integrate and fuse us with the rest of the universe of which we are but parts, not only parts as bodies, but parts as minds in universal consciousness. So what is a natural virtue? It's actually you as a individual body that are in health with the harmony of the universe. And in between that, there's psychical happiness we all have. So health, happiness, harmony, holism, they're all one integrated harmonic whole in the cosmos. And the Greek word, of course, cosmos, comes from etymologically the Koine Greek, which means harmony. So happiness, health, harmony, holism, they all have to do with the parts functioning together in the way for which they were designed, and the purpose for which they're unfolding at a higher level. So these natural virtues, and we'll go into some of those, because that basically is what I wanted to cover in those 14 domains of the Virtueverse. We're actually going to unpack what those natural virtues are. So that's a lot to do, but I wanted to point out to you in terms of the Bodhi Mandala, in terms of you as a conscious being that are putting yourself into harmonic alignment with the natural principles that govern the universe. These are things in which you, as a participant of that natural virtue, will color your mind. You see, the mind will accommodate anything. Thoughts arise, pay attention to them. Thoughts arise, they abide for a while, they mutate, and then they disappear like a mist in the morning sun. And that's the pattern of the mind, any mind. So when that mind associates itself with a natural virtue, that's called an associated virtue. Your mind is preoccupied with, for instance, clarity when you're reading something, serenity when you're beholding a natural scene or perhaps an art object. These are, or perhaps efficacy when you're applying proficiently the powers that you've developed in your own technical and creative skills. All of these things are virtues that fill the mind, and for the time the mind is filled, it has associated virtue. That's very important. And the longer that the mind associates itself with a virtue, with a strength of character, the more that it becomes a cause. It's implanted, it's embedded within your mind stream, and becomes a causal factor in your intra-agency causation, where you generate, as the I, objects of the I, things that appear internally as ideas, externally as sensible objects. The mind is being impressed by that. And the more that it associates itself with positive virtues, the more that these become the seeds for future activity, which then can motivate you to act accordingly, to plan accordingly, to regard and behold and care for accordingly. So then your actions begin to move from the inside to the outside because they're motivated by the mindset of virtue. And in the actual world in which we all participate, in time and space with entities according to productive causation, as well as each of us having our own self-generative causation, and all of it held together by an emanational causation where all happens together all at once. All of this is pinpointed indexically in the here and the now with the entities that are occupied within your local causative space as creative virtue. There where you make awakened contributions to the people around you, the animals around you, the plants around you, the environment around you, whether it's architecture or parks or parkitecture, or whether it's something that has an objective reality to you as a subjective experiencer that now is put within a brighter light. It functions in some brighter way within the grander cosmic picture. That's creative virtue. That's where you are contributing through appreciation, through investigation, through exploration and sharing and giving, generosity. And all of this is part of ultimate virtue. Ultimate virtue is where all the obscurations, where all the obstructions, internal that is emotional, mental, are eliminated, they're purified, so that you can act in creative virtue along a line that allows you, as the virtue projector, to work through what you have accumulated and to select that as a conscious psychical entity, and then to utilize your mind, your emotions, and your body as convection mechanisms in order to take the virtue that you've installed in yourself and to radiate that through your various actions in the outer world, according appropriately, whether it's professionally or privately, or whether it's romantically, or whether it is you in terms of your meditative and contemplative experience. So, in terms of you as an entirely constituted being, as a spirit or consciousness, as a soul or self-consciousness, and as soma, that is, as a body where you have consciousness of others, other consciousness, there are these 14 domains. And these domains we could symbolize in a cogno card accordingly. Here, in terms of the Virtueverse, what are the natural virtues? Well, we often ascribe virtues as being moral virtues or intellectual virtues, but actually there are 14 domains which we can begin with the intellectual virtues, which are such things as curiosity and wisdom, or prudence, knowing what to do appropriately at the right time. And then we have moral virtues such as courage and honesty and loyalty and a sense of justice. And there are religious virtues, of course, and these are such things as faith and revelation and compassion and generosity. And then there are the larger spiritual virtues that don't depend necessarily on a religious ideology or dogma, but are more along the lines of opening up your natural, aesthetic, intuitive, moral, and sense of truth, the aletheia that I've often referred to, that alethic sense, where you have a sense of an idea of yours that corresponds to reality in some form or another, to give you an insight accordingly. And then, of course, we have other virtues, such as the artistic and creative virtues, technical virtues, social virtues, and interpersonal virtues. The difference there is that social virtues play into the larger commonweal or a well-being of society, where interpersonal are face-to-face and organic. You have, of course, business virtues. There's a correct way in order to accumulate wealth that is going to functionally benefit the entire ecosystem. Financial virtues, as well as political virtues and interspecies, which we could call ecological virtues. Athletic virtues, of course, which are often extolled in sporting events and Olympics, case in point, as an apexal case in point. And then meta virtues. These are synthetic virtues, virtues that tie all the others. They're supportive of the others. They unify the others, and they help to inter-amplify. Together, all these virtues provide a multidimensional framework by which you and I and every other sentient, conscient, intelligent being is able to fluoresce, to flower, which is essentially what virtues are. The flowering of the human potential. So, in terms of the Virtueverse, we understand that there's more to a virtue than merely it floating along an intellectual domain or a moral domain or a religious or a technical or creative domain. All of these various domains are integrated and they work together in each of us, has these various domains in which we practice virtue, whether we know it or not. We put ourselves together constantly in terms of our character and our personality. Our personality, if you will, is the mask of mind, emotions, vitality, and body that help us to manifest in this world through behavior the various things that we are experiencing inside as psychical beings, as self-conscious souls, which have around us an innerscape that has accumulated a great deal not only of memories, in terms of mind, but sentiments and affections in terms of the heart or the feeling aspect, as well as habits and inclinations and incentives that we've developed along the vital dimension of our doing or our acting. When we're speaking of virtues, this has a unique correlation or relationship to the willing aspect of human consciousness and to that dimension. Because virtue is really the means by which the character of consciousness comes into being. And character here is, of course, the entire system, the psychical system, the interior scape of one's being, where you experience happiness. That internal state is where the Virtueverse operates in terms of these 14 domains, so that your skills, for instance, as an artisan, are primarily collected in the psychical realm and exercised through your physical well-being. We've spoken before of the transformation that takes place when you begin to take the elements of the personality, that is the mind, the emotions, and the body, the things that in the finite world make the inner appearances of ideas and the outer appearances of sensibilia, of things that are sensed in the world. These things themselves, fused together, are a personality and character, which is the structure of that personality that perdures and is the underlying base of motivation by which the personality, of course, feeds in order to interact with the outside world. And virtues are a way of taking one's natural powers and abilities and allowing them to move from a constricted to an expansive state when it comes to your temperament, so that you no longer seem separative, but you feel to be integral with the rest of the world. And that is the aim of conscience. You no longer participate in what in the East is called the heresy of separativeness. Instead, you see yourself as part of the integral whole. And so it goes for the perspective, where you move from a fixed and frozen perspective into a free, so that you have choices and insights and delights and perks, things that incentivize you rather than the habitual urges that have you impulsively move into action. And so then your personality begins to alter as well, and your attitude changes. And so that with your pledges and your presumptions and your preferences and predilections that relate, of course, to your will and to your mind and to your emotions or to your feelings, and then to your doings. These things move from a closed to an open state of operation, in which you have, instead of following constricted commitments, these have become natural, ingrained, fortified elements of the will. They become fortitudes. And in each of these transformations that take place, It's a building of conscience. And the building of conscience is building in one of these 14 domains. So, what we'll do the next time is we'll take a look at some of these domains in a little more in depth. And until then, behave when you must. Be good whenever you can. But above all else, be yourself.